You are watching WION The World is One. Thank you very much for staying with us and welcome back. I'm American Joker. We begin this bulletin with the breaking news coming in from Pakistan, and according to reports from Pakistan media, General Pervez Musharraf has passed away in a hospital in Dubai. Once again, Pervez Musharraf has passed away in hospital in Dubai. The 76-year-old former Pakistan president was living in Dubai in self-exile. Now, according to reports, he was admitted in the hospital after he developed heart and blood-related complications. And if you're just joining us, this is breaking news from Pakistan, and it is being reported that former Chief of Army Staff and President Pervez Musharraf has passed away at American hospital in UAE after prolonged illness. And local media reports quoting his family members say that the former four-star general succumbed to a heart and blood-related complication. He was hospitalized for a couple of weeks due to a complication of this ailment. And Musharraf was the 10th president of the South Asian nation after the successful military coup back in 1999. He served as the 10th CJCSC from 1998 to 2001 and the 7th top general from 1998 to 2007. Once again, if you're just joining us, this is breaking news from Pakistan, and it is being reported that former Chief of Army Staff and President Pervez Musharraf has passed away at American hospital in UAE after a prolonged illness. And local media reports quoting his family members say that the former four-star general succumbed to a heart and blood-related complication. He was hospitalized for a couple of weeks due to a complication of his ailment. And our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik is joining us at this moment to tell us more about this. Anas Malik, what more do we know?
Unfortunate news, Eric. Pakistan's former president and military dictator, General retired Pervez Musharraf, has passed away, and this is what has been confirmed by diplomatic sources. He passed away earlier this morning at the American hospital in Dubai. He was under treatment for over a year now for multiple organ failure related disease, and today in the morning it was just not possible to revive him. The family, as we speak, because the news has just literally a short while back dawned upon them, so they're getting done with the formalities, and then the decision to bury him, whether to bury him in Dubai or to get his body back to Pakistan, will be taken. The high probability is that his body will be brought back to Pakistan, but what we know so far is that the decision on the matter is yet to be taken by the family. His immediate family is there. His son, his daughters, both are in Dubai, and they were, as what we understand, as per reports, that they were in Dubai at the time when he passed away. What we also know is that Pervez Musharraf had developed this multiple organ failure in the past as well. His family had been asking for prayers in general, because this disease, what they said, was not curable. He was on essentially medication that would delay the medical complications, but could not avoid the medical complications. Earlier this morning, as I said, the news the unfortunate news rather has dawned upon them, which is that General retired Pervez Musharraf, Pakistan's 11th president and the 10th Chief of Army Staff, is no more. Eric?
Anas Malik is our Pakistan Bureau Chief. He's with us live at this moment. If you're just joining us, this is breaking news coming in from Pakistan, where former Chief of Army Staff and President Pervez Musharraf has passed away at American hospital in the UAE after a prolonged illness. And according to local media reports, quoting his family members, they say that the former four-star general succumbed to a heart and blood-related complication. He was hospitalized for a couple of weeks in the UAE due to this complication. Musharraf was the 10th president, like you heard there from our Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik, of the South Asian nation after the successful military coup in 1999. Anas Malik, what do you remember about Pervez Musharraf?
Well, it's very interesting, Eric. I was literally a kid at the time when the coup took place. But very interestingly, General retired Pervez Musharraf went to the same school as I went to in Karachi, the St. Patrick's High School. And not just him, the former BJP leader or prominent BJP leader L.K. Advani also went to St. Patrick's High School. The fondest memory that I have is General Musharraf visiting at least thrice during our school time as twice as the Chief of Army Staff and the President as well, which was what he say the CNC, the Commander-in-Chief, and then once as the President. I had happened to have multiple interactions with him over the course of years, after he left the reign of the president. And in one such interaction, I actually asked him, because the very interesting bit was that his meeting with L.K. Advani, in 2004, when L.K. Advani, the Indian Home Minister, was visiting Pakistan, that was slated to last for about 30 minutes, and that lasted for over 2 hours and 10 minutes. So when I sat down with General Musharraf, I had recently learned about this, and I asked General Musharraf about it, that what led to the meeting being prolonged. And he said, well, both of us figured out that we went to the same school. And that is the reason the conversation just prolonged, because L.K. Advani was quote-unquote a patrician, and so was General Pervez Musharraf as well. And they had enormous conversation around school times, as to how the school was, how the food was, how the school canteen was, because both of them went to a convent, a missionary school. That is one of the fondest memories that I have, because then after he got to know that I also went to the same school, we had a long conversation around it,
right.
Because he was just reminiscing his times back from 60s and 70s in the school. What is also pertinent to mention was his memory. He was born in August 1942 or 1943 in Delhi, and was probably one of those few in Pakistan who are still to be who were from the pre-partition era. So he had a knack for memory as well,
Anas Malik, sorry
and
to
he
cut
has
you
an
short.
immaculate.
Anas Malik, sorry to cut you short. Now that you've brought the Indian connection, let me bring in our principal diplomatic correspondent, Sidhant Sibol. Probably he can tell us this Indian connection with Pervez Musharraf. How was it, if you can remember?
Well, Pervez Musharraf will not be remembered kindly by India and by Indians. He was a person who was considered as the chief architect of the Kargil war, the Kargil conflict. He was the person who was backstabbing India. Of course, there were ventures, peace ventures as well. The Agra summit is an example of it, but Agra summit could not lead to a long-term peace. In fact, it was said that the Agra summit was the best opportunity for India and Pakistan to come at peace when it comes to Kashmir. But largely, he will be a person who will be seen as the villain of the story. He had the opportunity to have peace with India. Of course, as Anas pointed out, he was born here in Delhi, India's national capital, and he also pointed out several times about it, but largely he was a person who played an instrumental role in the first decade of the century when it comes to Pakistan and India-Pak relationship. Of course, when it comes to Pakistan, Anas probably will give a better view of how Pakistan will remember him. But right now, of course, India is waking up to this news. Many of us, me and Anas, were like kids when we, of course, read about stories like the Agra summit, the Kargil conflict. So this is something that was part of our formative age when we understood nuances of the foreign policy. And in fact, our teachers used to tell us that this is the time which will be remembered in history as an era where India and Pakistan can find peace. But peace, of course, is still yet to be found out when it comes to India and Pakistan. But largely, it's the Kargil conflict through which India will remember Pervez Musharraf, a man responsible for many deaths. Of course, Pakistani deaths as well. Many of the Pakistani bodies were not claimed by the Pakistani authorities. But largely, the conflict of Kargil is something that has essentially defined the India-Pakistan relationship, which we see currently. Of course, 2019 was another year that has now given a different direction to India-Pakistan relationship. But when it comes to Pervez Musharraf, it was the conflict, it was the peace of virtues, but essentially it's something that has given a kind of a new chapter to India-Pakistan relationship, a relation that now, of course, has been in a stalemate.
All right, that is our principal diplomatic correspondent, Sidhan Sibol. Stay with me, Sidhan, because I want to tell our viewers what is happening right now. I have Sidhan Sibol with me. I also have our Pakistan Bureau Chief, Anas Malik, giving us details about this latest development in Pakistan, where former Chief of Army Staff and President Pervez Musharraf has died and has passed away at American hospital in UAE after a prolonged illness. Anas Malik, coming back to you, before his exile, what legacy did he leave in Pakistan? What memories do Pakistanis have about Pervez Musharraf?
Well, it's a mix and match on the plate. It won't be wrong to say, Eric, because in 1999, on the 12th of October, when Pervez Musharraf did that coup and essentially revoked the then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif under the charges of corruption, there was greater liking for him, because at that point of time, people still reminisce that though it was a dark patch on Pakistan's democracy, but what we saw that people literally took out on the roads and welcomed him. But his promise to have held the elections in about 100 or 120 days was never materialized, and that is what took the hit for him. He later went on to do the elections in 2001, and since then he had somewhat of a political opposition as well. He continued to be the president of Pakistan along with the CNC, or the commander-in-chief, as we say it. And that is what made things much more complicated, because his vision of or his understanding of politics was little or probably not there. He saw things in black and white, and in political structures things do not move in black and white, at least not as clear as what common people would understand. And that is why he was at loggerheads with conventional politicians such as Qazi Hussain Ahmad or Makhtoon Amin Fahim. Back then, Benazir Bhutto was in self-exile. Back then, Nawaz Sharif was in Jeddah because he had just struck off a deal with Musharraf through the Saudi involvement, and that is the reason we had this second tier or mid tier of leadership on the political front, at least, but he was at loggerheads with them as well. The rise of MQM in domestic politics would be associated with General Musharraf because he understood Karachi's dynamics. The Muttahida Qawmi movement was a political reality. That is the reason his General Pervez Musharraf would be associated with the rise of the MQM as well. And then his initial thought of vis-a-vis jihad or perpetrating jihad with India. And then not later when Jaish-e-Mohammed attacked him in 2003, and since then we saw that that decisive operation that he had launched. That was also very interesting. He would be known as somebody who has survived multiple assassination attempts, but in his own words, he would have said that "die another day," quote unquote. That is also who Pervez Musharraf would be remembered as. Then, sorry. Then going forward, if I talk to you broadly, his participation or cooperation with the Americans precisely after the war on terror, the Afghans would of course not be very wary of that. In fact, if I were to quote you, Mullah Abdul Salam Zaif, the then Afghan ambassador to Pakistan, who was essentially from the Taliban, and after the American invasion, in his own words, he says that the worst of the worst times of his life was when he was in his house sleeping in Islamabad as the ambassador, and two men broke in and said, "Excellency, you're no more Excellency, you're under arrest." And he said, "Well, who has this ordered?" And the order came from, as what they understand, was from General Musharraf. That is the reason. That is how he would be looked at in the counter-terrorism fora as well. But if I talk to you about the GDP growth or an exponential growth,
before you go to that,
that had been immaculate.
Anas Malik, before you go to that, there's so much to talk about Musharraf, but I want us to, focus on the man that he was. From these images that we are showing on air, he used to be spotted in army regalia. I don't know, how was he considered in Pakistan? Was he considered a ruler, more of a ruler, or a president? But before you answer that, let me go back to our principal correspondent, Sidhant Sibol, talking about the relations between India and Pakistan during his era. Would you say that he ruled with an iron fist when it came to relations between these neighboring countries? And what was he, like an enigma of some sort?
Well, I won't say him as an enigma, given the fact that when it comes to Pakistani military dictatorship, they tend to act like enigma, but they end up usually. But if we talk about his chances of peace, he had a strong chance of making sure that India and Pakistan remain in peace. The Agra summit is perhaps something that was never achievable, essentially, and there could have been a lot of outcomes if Musharraf would have played a more decisive role. But of course, we know what happened at the Agra summit. But he was credited for the 2004 ceasefire between India and Pakistan. He essentially believed, it looked like from New Delhi, that first I will able to perhaps military push India. That did not happen. We saw that after the Kargil conflict. But later on, of course, he tried to have peace with India. But by that time, India was not very keen on. And history repeats similarly with Pakistan. Of course, if you look at Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Lahore, that was a famous visit and everyone thought peace will be achievable. But then we saw terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir. So essentially, whenever India tries to have peace, Pakistan backstabs. And Musharraf was a classic example of it. Kargil and the Agra summit are the examples of it. But essentially, he was keen on having peace with India later on in his life, and that is why it looked like that the ceasefire was something that was a milestone in India-Pakistan relationship. Now, of course, he was later on besieged by a lot of domestic issues as well.
Sidhant, do you think that the remnants of Musharraf still remain to this day when you talk about the politics in Pakistan?
Well, when it comes to the politics of Pakistan, I can give an Indian perspective. That's the fact that the military has a very strong say, and military essentially is the kingmaker in Pakistan. We see at Imran Khan's case, the fallout between military and Imran Khan, which reached at an unprecedented level, of course. But essentially, military is the main body that governs the politics, the everyday life of Pakistan. And Musharraf is a classic example of that. Musharraf could have achieved many things with India. He was a strong man, but ended up, perhaps many would say, in a disgraceful way. He, of course, has died outside of his country. And the military, of course, continues to reign in Pakistan. And right now, of course, it's up to the military. It looks like that if military wants to have peace with India or not, they essentially define the foreign policy and foreign policy relating to India.
Right. Our principal diplomatic correspondent Sidhant Sibol and Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik are talking to us about this latest development. And if you're just joining us, this is breaking news from Pakistan. It's no longer breaking. but a developing story. Former Chief of Army Staff and President Pervez Musharraf has passed away at American Hospital in UAE after a prolonged illness. Anas Malik, coming back to you and the question that I asked earlier, in these visuals, in these images, you see Pervez Musharraf in military or army fatigue. Was he considered more of a ruler or a president?
Eric, I'll answer your question very shortly, but I'll just slightly drift apart and come away and come to the India-Pakistan pit. Just to add a stat on that, while as Siddharth has mentioned that he's got ugly memories with India vis-a-vis the Kargil and Agra summits, but that is also a reality that the 2003 ceasefire agreement of the line of control, at the line of control to be precise, that came into being because of General Retd Pervez Musharraf, and under his leadership when he was commanding the Pakistani military and Pakistan by and large, number one. And number two, out of the 109 formal bilateral meetings that Pakistan and India have been having since 1952, 57 of them, 52 of them took place during General Retired Pervez Musharraf's reign, precisely from the year 2003 until 2007, until the time he let go of his presidentship. So the highest number of bilateral engagements between Pakistan and India, 52 from the year 2003 until 2007, they took place under General Pervez Musharraf's time, and that is also one such thoughts that he was keen on engagement with India, and that engagement or that keenness came a bit late, only after what we understand was the attack by the Jaish-e-Mohammed, by the JEM against him, but he was sort of keen on having engaged with India. Now, coming to your question, whether he was seen more of a president or a ruler, well, he was seen more of a ruler because, as I said, his understanding of political structure was little, or probably none. He had his own ways, unconventional ways that might have not been liked generally by the political side, but it was definitely welcomed by the then common public, because he had relief incoming, seeming relief that was incoming, and of course his ties with the US after the war on terror, because we saw that that famous line by former President Bush, the US president, which talked about either you are with us or against us, and General Retired Pervez Musharraf's own words in his book In the Line of Fire, he said Pakistan did not have a choice, and I did what I believe was the right thing, was to side with the Western allies. And post that, we saw that a lot of money flowed in. That particular time, he was under a lot of critique. General Retired Pervez Musharraf would also be remembered as somebody who, despite of being a military dictator, despite of the fact that he was giving away people at a very cheap cost for $5,000 per person, and that is in his own book. I am not quoting anyone else, but to quote General Retired Pervez Musharraf from his own book In the Line of Fire, he would be remembered as somebody who's literally sold off people to the Americans for as low as $5,000 US. Right. But despite of that, he resisted something called on the sovereign chunk or the sovereign bunk, because he would want that the Pakistani intelligence that he had once commanded, or the Pakistani establishment, would be at the helm of these operations. General Retired Pervez Musharraf's time would also be remembered as when Pakistan-US relations diplomatically had hit an all-time low following the assassination or killing of US journalist Daniel Pearl. That was also quite of a time, because in 2002, when Daniel Pearl's decapitated body was found, General Musharraf was still the ruler, he was still the president, and at that very time, around the same time in fact, he was assuring the Americans that that Pakistani state is doing all what it can to get rid of such elements. So it was a mix and match, it was a mixed plate overall. Eric?
Our correspondents Anas Malik and Siddharth Sibol, thank you very much for your insights today. And if you're just joining us, just a quick recap. Former Chief of Army Staff and President Pervez Musharraf has passed away Today, at American hospital in UAE, after a prolonged illness, we are getting reports, or local media reports, quoting his family members saying that the former four-star general succumbed to a heart and blood condition. He was hospitalized for a few weeks, or a couple of weeks, to a complication of his ailment. Musharraf was the 10th president of the South Asian nation after the successful military coup in 1999. This is a developing story on WION World is One. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.